Charter Local Edition with your host, John MacDonald.
Hello and welcome. I'm honored today to be visiting with Montana Attorney General Tim Fox. Welcome. Appreciate you giving us some time today.
Thanks for having me on board.
Thank you. You have had a very busy year. Legislative-wise, the Attorney General's office had a fairly substantial agenda this year.
We did. You know, we had 20 bills this year, agency bills, and we have to go out and find sponsors for those bills. And half of our bills were carried by Democrats and half by Republicans. Many of them are public safety type bills, law enforcement type bills, and we did 13 bills in the 2013 session, and all of those passed and were signed by the governor. And fortunately, all 20 bills this year were signed by the governor as well.
That's a very good track record in a legislative session.
We're 33 for 33.
Very good. Let's talk specifically about a few of those. One of them that came up as an issue for the Attorney General's office was the doubling of DUI fines. Tell us a little bit about why you pursued that.
Sure. You know, Montana really has got a problem with driving under the influence. We're among the top in statistics for everything from deaths and injuries to just incidences of DUI. And of course, it's going to take a culture shift, if you will. And we spent a lot of time on prevention and education. But we also noticed that our DUI laws were very antiquated, and they were a mishmash. They seemed to get changed in some way or another, and they were internally inconsistent. So we fixed all of those things, but we also realized that our fines for DUIs lagged way behind our neighbors, neighboring states around us. And so we've doubled the DUI fines. We fixed some problems that gave judges an issue on how to charge folks. And we created a situation where it used to be the taxpayers paid for blood tests when somebody refused to take a breathalyzer test. And now there's an administrative fee that the driver actually has to pay. If they don't want to do the breathalyzer, which is free, and a search warrant is obtained to get a blood test, there's a $300 fee for that. So we're just trying to take a comprehensive approach and make sure that we're not only focusing on prevention education at like middle school levels on the dangers of drinking and driving, but also bringing our laws into the 21st century.
Sure. And another big issue this year for the Attorney General's office was the human sex trafficking bill that got very broad support and a lot of attention. What was the impetus behind that?
Well, you know, you'd like to think in Montana that human trafficking, primarily for sex trafficking, but also labor, is something that just doesn't happen here. But in law enforcement, I know that we have had incidences of typically young girls, the ages between 13 and 16, trafficked into Montana for sex and also trafficked out of Montana. And so our laws, again, were antiquated in that regard. We had a system really that treated young girls, young people, as criminals rather than as victims. And when men or others traffic minors, those minors need to get the attention they need as victims and get them out of that lifestyle. So that was a huge change there. We now have laws that allow the victims of human trafficking to sue the human traffickers, get compensation because it changes their lives drastically. We now have a fund for education purposes and trying to raise awareness. We have a hotline. We've done a lot of things through the last couple of years, and bringing these laws again up to where they should be was a priority of mine. And we had a Democrat, Kimberly Dudick, representative from Missoula, carried that bill, and she did a fine job.
And that thing did. The legislation had a tremendous amount of broad bipartisan support, as well as a lot of different organizations. The Trucking Association, motor carriers were all involved in that as well.
It was nearly unanimous.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about electronic cigarettes. I know that was another issue for you this session. Where did we end up on that legislation?
Well, the governor signed that, and again, we got broad support. Basically what we did is we asked the legislature to ban the sale of e-cigarettes to minors. E-cigarettes have nicotine in them, highly addictive. It's an unhealthy drug. Certainly there is a reason for some people who are hooked on tobacco products to use e-cigarettes to get off of the tobacco. But there's no reason that a minor should be smoking these e-cigarettes and inhaling the nicotine. I had previously written to the Food and Drug Administration and had asked Congress to regulate this issue. They didn't do it, so we did it here in the state through our legislature.
Right. And the last issue I want to visit with you about is the online sales tax. I know this is something that your office has been involved with, along with attorneys general from other states. Talk a little bit about what's going on and what the current status of that is.
Well, you know, Congress always comes up with fancy names to make things sound better than they are. This is called the Marketplace Fairness Act. It's come up in Congress before. We've been able to kill it. Basically what it does is it imposes on local internet businesses the obligation to collect taxes for about 10,000 states and localities. Now these are places in other states and cities like Detroit that can't manage their bottom line. They're always spending more money than they have, and so they're looking for ways to tax others. Montana doesn't have a sales tax. We don't like that. This is very onerous on our small business people in Montana if they are to have to subject themselves to all these other jurisdictions' taxing powers, collect those taxes, and then pay them to other states. So I've got a consortium of bipartisan consortium of attorneys general. We pointed out to Congress that this is in fact an unconstitutional law. We'll continue to work to try to suppress it and get it defeated.
And what are you going to be working on during the interim between now and the next session?
Well, one of the wonderful Senate joint resolutions this past session, brought by Diane Sands, who brought the e-cigarettes bill, by the way, from Missoula, is a sexual assault study. We've had a focus, as you know, through what's happened in Missoula here in Montana on the way we handle sexual assaults, particularly in how we treat victims of sexual assault. We have a lot of cultural issues like victim blaming and bias, what have you. So I've decided to take the lessons learned there, and we've asked the legislature to do this interim study through September of 2016 and look at everything we do having to do with sexual assault. How do we treat victims? How do we investigate and prosecute? What are the societal norms? Do we have to change anything in what we're doing? And so I'm grateful to Senator Sands that she brought that Senate joint resolution, and we're going to work very closely with the legislature to see if we can't do better.
Good. Obviously a very important issue in Montana too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to thank you again. We've been visiting today with Montana Attorney General Tim Fox. I appreciate you taking some time out from your schedule to visit with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Charter Local Edition has been an exclusive presentation of Charter Communications, providing original programming.